Alright, what's up guys? This is NinjaDeathStrike bringing you my 700 sub deck profile. Actually got a lot of very varied requests in the update video. I don't think I ever got two of the same deck mentioned. I did get a few for black and white on decks, and just decided not to go that route because I'd like to show you guys the cards and what they do, and I think there might be some proxies on Bebe Search, but there aren't any card pictures yet. And what's more, I haven't tested black and white on at all, so it would really just be speculation coming from me, and I'd prefer to give you a list that I've actually done some testing with. So instead of that, I decided to do Klinklang, seeing as how it just won nationals. It's going to become really popular, and it's an interesting deck. I think I've done enough about eels. It doesn't really need to be gone over again, so I opted to go for Klinklang. So let's get into it. Again, this is a skeleton. You'll see my card total is 53, so I'm going to talk about what's included, and then after that I'll go over some options about things you can add. Mostly they're going to be attackers, but let's look at the first thing we have. My Klinklang line is 413. I suppose some people probably only play 2, and you could get away with it, but seeing as how Klinklang is kind of the heart of the deck, I really wanted to have 3, especially because they can get KO'd from time to time with a catcher or whatnot, so I went with 3. You could bump it down to 2 if you wanted to, but for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure most of you do by now, what Klinklang does, it's 140 HP stage 2, and the reason it's here is its ability Shift Gear. It reads as often as you like during your turn. Before you attack, you may move a metal energy attached to one of your Pokemon to another. It doesn't say basic metal. It can be any kind of metal, which is going to be very key later. So this is very, very important. I mean, it's the heart of the deck, so I wanted to make sure I had a nice thick line that I'm going to be able to get it up as consistently as possible. So beyond that, we have 2 Darkrai EX. Again, I would absolutely recommend playing 2 minimum. You could, I guess, go with more, but I really think 2 is the ideal number here. And Darkrai can serve as an attacker in this deck, but the main reason he's here is for his ability Dark Cloak. Each of your Pokemon that has any dark energy attached to it has no retreat cost. So again, it doesn't say basic dark, and that's going to be really important coming up later when I explain what the deck does. So that's the heart of the deck, Klinklang and Darkrai together. And beyond that, we have Smeargle, just for consistency. I have 2 in my build. I suppose you could do 1 if you wanted to, and it wouldn't really matter, but getting a few extra supporters per game, and especially in the first few turns when you're trying to set up, can be really, really strong, especially with a slow deck like this. So that's why Smeargle's in here. Lastly, I have Groudon EX. You'll notice he's the only attacker I have besides Darkrai right now, and I left him in here just because he will factor into almost any Klinklang variant, just because he's fighting type, honestly, and he's a tank. So attacking with him early game is actually okay. Tromp is not bad in the first couple of turns if your opponent, especially if your opponent's not able to drop any Violites. You can really stack on that extra damage the first couple of turns and then have Giant Claw hit for a whole lot of damage after that. So you're going to want to play at least 1 copy of him. I think my personal list, I have 2, but it's not mandatory. The great thing about Klinklang is you can really build it to suit your personal preferences and also what you're expecting to go up against. You just put a big heavy basic of that type into the deck, and then hit for weakness on whatever you're expecting to face. So I will go over some attacker options in a bit after I finish the skeleton, but that's going to do it for your basic Pokemon line. And now let's look at the trainers. You'll see here my supporter line is 4 N, 4 Oak, 2 Juniper, and 2 Random Receiver. The reason I cut down on the Juniper is just because I do play a stage 2, so sometimes I don't want to get rid of that card. I don't want to ditch my Klinklang if I have it in my hand. I suppose I could opt for Sages, but I really do like the straight draw of Juniper, especially since this is still a pretty heavy trainer deck, so playing a Juniper won't always be too bad, but it was risky enough that I didn't want to draw into it a lot, so I opted to only run 2 copies of it. For N, because this is a slower deck, it can help to have that disruption if your opponent has taken a few prizes before you can set up, which will normally happen just because they can catch our Klinks and Smeargles and stuff like that. Hopefully none of your EXs are getting knocked out before you get a chance to use them, but N is a pretty good card. I wouldn't say 4 is mandatory, but that's what I liked for my list, so you can change it around how you want. And then 4 Pawnt, really good in this deck, just for the shuffle and draw without being forced to discard. So that's going to be the supporters. You will know an absence of note an absence of twins in my build. I actually don't know if twins gets played standard. I suppose I could check it out, but I don't always like to rely on twins, especially in a deck that doesn't play Vileplume. If you committed to a heavy twins line in this deck and then you get matched up against a Vileplume deck, those are basically just going to be dead draws for you, and that could be really problematic. So I opted not to play the twins. You could certainly put them in here if you wanted them. You could even switch them out for the Junipers and probably be okay, but since I have the random receivers, I really wanted to stick with straight shuffle and draw or discard and draw for my supporters. And beyond that, we have 3 Junk Arm. This is an absolute minimum. Playing 4 certainly would not be out of place. Junk Arm is just amazing. So yeah, feel free to max that out. No worries. 1 of Eyelet. Again, this is kind of the minimum. I have seen some people advocate not playing it at all, but I really think that it pushes a lot of 2-hit KOs into the 3-hit KO territory, and that's really strong with a deck whose goal is to tank. You know, you don't always have access to your max potions when you'd like to heal, so if Eyelet can give you 1 more turn to hopefully tank a hit and then max potion off the damage. So I think 1 is warranted. You don't really need more than that. You could fit 2 in if you wanted to, and I don't think it would be too big of a deal. It's also really important for your Darkrais because you don't want them to get retaliated by Terrakion. So in my list, I think I actually have 2, but I would definitely recommend playing at least 1. Just my thoughts. You could try it without, I suppose. Next up, we have 2 Pokemon Catcher, which may seem a little low, but the idea behind this deck is just to tank, and Pokemon Catcher, while it's really good, it doesn't do a whole lot for this deck to the point where you're going to want, you know, 5 or 6 per game. So I think 2 is okay. You can use it to stall early game. You can use it to take specific prizes if they try to retreat out of your damage, but the list is just so tight that fitting in more than 2 is going to be a little bit of a problem. Though if you can do it, 3 would be okay. I definitely wouldn't recommend 4. This deck just isn't fast enough to need 4, and I think 2 is an acceptable number. So after that, we have Rare Candy. I'm playing 3. Feel free to play 4. It's, you know, just going to make the deck more consistent. The faster you get a Klinklang up, the better. But again, I had some space issues, so I ended up going down to 3 instead of 4. But you're going to want 3 absolute minimum, as this card is essential to get your deck running. Next up is 3 Heavy Ball, and Heavy Ball is really fantastic in this deck. There's actually a Klink, I'll pull it up here, who has a 3 retreat cost as well as a Clang, so you can search out the entire Klinklang line in with the Heavy Ball, which is really good. I think it's better than PCOM in this deck, although if you wanted to run 1 or 2 PCOMs, I think you could. I like to just stick with Heavy Ball here, and the reason for that is that I also run a fair number of Dual Ball, so Dual Ball works to get your basics out, and it's also going to be able to get all of your EXs, since all of your EXs are basics. And so I think Dual Ball paired with Heavy Ball works pretty well for this deck. I'm running 3 of each, and I haven't had too many problems with that. So next up is another really key card for this deck. Besides Klinklang and Darkrai, I'd say it's the most important card in the deck, and that's Max Potion. If you don't know what Max Potion does, it heals all damage from a single Pokemon, but you have to discard all the energy attached to it. And so the trick with the deck is you can use Klinklang to move all of your energies off of a certain Pokemon, normally your active EX, hopefully with an Eviolite on it, play down that Max Potion, heal all the damage, and then move the energy right back on, because Shift Gear doesn't have a limit to the amount of times you can use it. So you're going to want at least 2. This is a very low number. I'd recommend 3. I've seen 4. I don't know if 4 is necessary, but I would definitely suggest having 3, especially since you can't always afford to junk arm for a Max Potion, and sometimes you need to get something else. So yeah, definitely make sure you have some of these. You'll notice in my list, in my skeleton list, I don't have a switch. That's because Darkrai can give free retreat, and you can use Klinklang to shift the energy up to the active, so switch is not necessary. However, it might make a nice one-of, simply because sometimes you get catchered and you don't have the option to do the energy trick to get out of the active spot. So I think that one switch would not be amiss, and I actually believe I have one built into my list right now, just in case. You know, you can throw it in the discard pile and then junk arm for it if you need it, because your Klinklangs will get catchered, and they can be a little tricky to get out of the active spot. The reason for that lies in the energy count. If we look at our energy, we have 4 Rainbow, 4 Prism. The reason for maxing out both of these cards is because on the EXs, they provide energy of every type simultaneously. So that means they count at the same time as both a metal and dark energy, and so it allows any card with a rainbow is going to be able to get free retreat, and that's really important for Klinklang, because if you have a rainbow, you can shift it up to him and then retreat him for free. The Prism only works on the basic EXs, but they are your main attackers, and it'll also get Smeargle out, so that's really good. That's going to put us at 8 energy, and then I've also added 3 more just regular metal energies. Some people might want to play special metal, but I would recommend against that, just because the deck is already really vulnerable to Lost Removers. So having the basic metals allows you to drop a basic metal turn 1, or really anytime, and probably have it be safe. You could get hit by a Crushing Hammer, but it's not going to give your opponent a target for Lost Removers. So any attack where you need a colorless energy, you can always use the metal energy, and it still is able to be moved around by Klinklang, which means you can get it off of your Pokemon when you need to heal. So you'll notice that there's only 11 energy in this deck, and that probably seems pretty low, and it really is. But since the deck is designed to tank and never really give up prizes after it sets up, I find that 11 is normally enough, just because you don't lose that much energy. So once you do have that energy hit the board, it's probably going to stay there. 12 wouldn't be out of place by any means. 13 seems a little high just for this deck, because you're not losing it as fast, but as you'll see when you try to build the list, space gets so tight it's hard to really fit 12 or more. So I think 11 is a pretty good number. So that's going to cover the skeleton. I'll talk quickly about some attacking options, and I guess the next most used attacker in the deck besides Groudon and Darkrai is going to be Kyurem EX. Kyurem just seems like an EX card who always manages to stick around. He always kind of has a use. He's never really that great, but you know, he's not terrible either, and his first attack, Frozen Wings, can be really good because it makes your opponent discard a special energy, and with so much special energy floating around the metagame, he can be really clutch to slow your opponent down, and he can also get rid of DCEs to basically stop things like Tornadus or Mewtwo He can really hamper them. He also has the option to go for Hail Blizzard with 120 damage, which is the maximum output normally for this deck damage-wise. So you do have that option if you need it, but really he's in here for Frozen Wings. So most decks do play one of this guy, and after that, the attackers you want to put in really get pretty diverse. I'm not going to touch on all of them, but I will pull up some. The deck that won Nationals actually played a Kyogre EX, which is really cool because that card is not very good, but apparently he did really well with it. And Kyogre's role in this deck is sniping. Again, since you're not really getting one-shotted by stuff, you can afford to tank some hits, and then Smash Turn. Oh no, Dual Splash is going to do 50 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, so it can be used to target down things like, obviously, it just obliterates Dynamos in their place. It kills Oddishes in one shot, kills 2 Oddishes, which can be big. It can also take out Eels in 2 hits, so if you get to attack twice with it, you can kill 2 Eels on the same turn, which can just cripple your opponent's energy supply. So it certainly has its uses. I have not tested with it, so I can't speak to its worth too much, but it's something that I would like to try, and a card that I'll probably add into my list if I can manage it. And next up we have another card. Oh, whoa, I just refreshed my page. Let me pull that back up. Sorry, guys. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. Next card that we have the option of using is Mewtwo EX. This is a card that was not played in the National Champion version, but it is a card that I play in my deck. I would never play more than one, and if you play it, you need to be very, very careful about how you use it. The reason I have it in my deck is because I like to be able to counter another Mewtwo very quickly, and it's also really good for ensuring that you pick up the last 2 prizes. So what it does is, some people, when they play against Klinklang, they'll just go aggro Mewtwo, and they'll stack as many energies as they can on their Mewtwo and just try to OHKO your guys, which is obviously really bad for your deck, because if you get OHKO'd, you can't use Max Potion and your whole deck falls apart. So once they start getting, 7 or 8 energies on their Mewtwo, up to the point where they're going to be OHKOing everything you have, that's when I like to drop mine, just shift a couple energies onto it and take out their Mewtwo, wipe all of their energy that was on that Mewtwo off the board, and hopefully regain my footing in the match. Even if your Mewtwo gets revenged, you should be in decent shape, because hopefully you'll still be far enough ahead in the prizes that you can afford to take out their next Mewtwo without relying on your own. So it's certainly an option for the deck, but it is not mandatory, obviously, as the championship deck did not play Mewtwo EX. Instead, he used a combination of a couple of other cards to kind of fill Mewtwo's role. And the first one is Cobalion, which is a card I've never tried in this deck, but it does have 2 really good attacks. The first one, Energy Press, kind of does the same thing as X-Ball, it's just a little weaker. It doesn't count the energy on Cobalion, but really you're only missing out on 20 damage since it still does a base of 20. So if they get a Mewtwo up with a lot of energy on it, you can take them out. I think they would need, let's see, 6 energy on their Mewtwo. That would do 100 and... no? Wait, I'm not going to try and do math on stream, sorry. But yeah, if you get enough energy on their guy, that'd only be 120. They need a little more than that. I guess it would be 8. 8 energy would do it, because that'd be 160 plus the base 20. So yeah, it can be used to take out Mewtwo's without playing your own, and then obviously Iron Breaker is really good for disruption. Another card that the championship deck included that I don't play myself is Shaman EX, and this was his late game finisher, where I said, I like to just drop the Mewtwo, shift all my energy up to it, and take the KO for my last 2 prizes on an EX. The championship deck kind of went a different route. It used Shaman EX to accomplish that. Shaman's also really good against Terrakion, obviously, but there is always the danger of starting with it or having it get catchered and one-shotted. Because its HP is really low, it can't tank hits like a lot of those other big EXs, so I'm not a big fan of the card in the deck, but it's certainly worth giving it a try. Other options would be things like Terrakion, Virizion. Really, any big basic could work, just depending on what types you want to include and what you're going to be facing. So that is going to do it for the deck list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it's helpful. I know the season's pretty much over now, but I guess you could still try playing around with it. So thanks for watching, guys. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about the deck list. If there's any cards you play in your Klinklang list that I forgot, let me know what they are and tell me why you play them. And I'll have more stuff coming your way shortly. Thanks for watching, guys.